But I mean, we're not going to record up.
Yes, I knew we were going to do that. Hey, everybody. This is Zach Roberts stepping in as the host, not just the co-host, because Dave is down in Puerto Rico on a vacation. No, actually, he's not on vacation. He's in Puerto Rico doing what he does, and he'll be back hopefully next week. Don't know, but hopefully will be. Because I'm really bad at doing this intro and opening thing. So we're here as always with Ron Hamilton, and our guest this week is Tyler Lavriviere. And I got your name right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. I wrote it out phonetically and everything. My own phonetically.
There you go.
I should know your last name by now. So, so this week we don't have anybody. We obviously tried to get some people on who have done active shooting situations, because obviously that's kind of the topic of the week. Probably, hopefully, month it'll be that everybody will be talking about, and also kind of hurricane coverage as well, but I've covered some tropical storms, no technical hurricanes. But we're gonna kind of talk about our first topic this week is on basically covering breaking news. As now we're all kind of breaking news people, even not just filing photos very quickly and trying to do all that, but we're all on Twitter, we're on Instagram, and we're quoted all the time by journalists who can't be bothered to leave their homes, as we were joking about before, to cover news events. So we have to be really careful about the way that we cover things, the photos that we share. Ron, what sort of like breaking news experience have you had with kind of important events where it's like really important to get it right the first time?
I guess the latest one we had here in Hawaii was the Marco Polo fire here in downtown, or down the street in Honolulu here. It was a big high-rise, and I guess the big thing was there was no sprinklers installed in it, and that sprinklers were not required back when it was built, so it was grandfathered in. Yeah. So it was a huge blaze. It would have been contained if they would have had sprinklers. So that was the biggest news lately that we've had out here. That was breaking news. It was really vital that we have everything correct. How many were dead, injured, things like that. The things you want to get right.
Yeah. I was surprised that story didn't last that long, because that story happened relatively recently after the, I feel bad. Was it Munich? Where was it that in Europe?
It was Britain.
Oh, was it? I'm sorry, Britain. Oh my God.
Yeah, the tower fire, yeah.
In Britain, that happened relatively soon after that. And I thought that there was going to be a tie-in, kind of like, let's have this conversation about safety. And then, I don't know, did Donald Trump tweet or something? Yeah. I don't remember what happened.
People forget about us out here in Hawaii pretty quick.
Yeah.
Well, stuff happens, and then,
you're guys, you're out on an island in the middle of the ocean, and oh no, that's Puerto Rico. You guys are actually out in the middle of an ocean. But anyway, Tyler, you've covered, I'm guessing, a lot of breaking news situations because you live in Chicago. And as we know, there's kind of a gun problem in Chicago.
Kind of, yeah. So, I mean, if you haven't been checking Donald Trump's Twitter or any of his lackeys' interviews or discussions, whenever Chicago's ever brought up, it's always about our shootings. And yeah, I've gone out on some of the most violent weekends. You only really have time to, like, if you want to get it right, you only have time to just go to like one shooting a night. Even though there might be like 6 or 7 because of how spaced out the city is, but also it's about getting it right, because just going there, hearing what the cops have to say, they don't really care. This will probably be like the 6th or 7th call they'll get that night that has to do with a gun or stuff. They just want to get to their next call, or they just want to get their shift done. So the big thing is to talk to the people around the area. But at the same time, you have to like go to multiple people, because the biggest thing is you'll get people that are just onlookers who want to take it as an opportunity to like get in the paper or, get famous for saying something. So usually the most vocal people are usually the people that I kind of steer away from, but it's usually like the neighbors. I'll go to the neighbor's house, who are always usually looking out at their window or looking on the porch, because again, when you have in Chicago, a shooting will bring out about 50 police officers. I'm not joking. We'll bring about 50 police officers. There'll be tons of squad cars. There'll be there might even be a wagon, like a paddy wagon.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen. People will be watching this. It doesn't matter what time of night it is. There will be people sitting in their porches, sitting by the windows, just watching. Because yes, it happens so often, but these people don't want to live like this. They don't want this to be their reality. So those are the people that generally give like the accounts of stuff they know. And usually they're good with talking with media better than they are with talking to police. Yeah. Because, police, they're asking the questions just to get it done now, instead of like, how has this affected you? Is your, our questions are more poignant to them more so than the actual
you'll also have journalists is not going to arrest you for getting angry. I've seen, between Marcus and Jim Vendreska out there, like their cover, and coverage of the stuff. I've seen at least a handful of times where the police have arrested some random person who they were supposed to interview, or they're just become a person of interest because of something they said, and they get hauled in. So at least they can talk to journalists and not be really worried.
Right.
They're going to get thrown in a paddy wagon. So,
and I think they also appreciate the fact that, at least here in Chicago, and I'm pretty sure any crime-ridden area, it's not, we're talking about more than just the crime. We're asking questions that are more than just what the crime is. We're trying to ask them about them. Like, how are they feeling about it? Because these people are the most marginalized people here in the city. Their stories are only ever told when there's 2 or 3 bodies hanging out on the corner. That's it. So getting it right is essential. Getting it right is essential because, again, you don't want to further, at least here in Chicago, you don't want to create a story that furthers that stereotype that the South Side is where the killings happen.
Yeah.
Because it's more than just where the killings happen.
Yeah. No, it's, whether you're covering Katrina, you're covering a lot of, like when I covered Katrina, it was a year later, I went to talk to people kind of to cover the recovery effort, and everybody really wanted to talk to me because there are communities that have larger issues that haven't been being dealt with, and they can finally kind of grab a person and be like, well, the flood happened, but this was exacerbated by the fact that, the sewage system has not been fixed in the last 20 years or whatever else. So I do want to, I want to ask you both questions about how you guys deal with kind of like social media, but I want to read, I really still want to just play this segment because On the Media, if you don't listen to it, it's a fantastic podcast from WNYC by Brooke Gladstone and Bob Garfield. They do a lot of really great news commentary. I disagree with them sometimes, but they do a lot of really great news commentary, a lot of fact checking kind of afterwards. And since they're a weekly show, they get to really talk about, kind of like us, but they get to really talk about things in kind of step back and talk about the news stories of the week in a way that most, to an extent, you can't blame MSNBC, NBC, and Fox and all these guys for occasionally for getting it wrong more often than a lot of News Weekly magazines, because they don't have time to sit back. They have to get some information out there. They have 24 hours, 7 days a week to fill. That's a larger question whether it should be like that. But I want to read. They put out these really fantastic little. You can print them out. Cards. I think they sell them as magnets for your refrigerator as well. But they put out these breaking news consumer handbooks, and they have one for big weather storms. They have one for terrorist attacks. They have them for police shootings, and they have one for active shooter edition. And this really, fortunately or unfortunately, really is continually important because as many people have said, this is the beat. If this is some sort of record, the shooting in Las Vegas is now, I think it said 59 was the latest number that I saw. On this is Monday night at 8:22. I unfortunately expect it probably will go up, but it is just 16 months ago was the Orlando shooting, when that was supposedly the record of the largest shooting, largest mass shooting in modern history. I always preface in modern history because we had a lot of mass shootings in the 1800s that don't get counted because they were just there was soldiers shooting Native Americans. But the Breaking News Consumer Handbook for Active Shooter Edition, it has 9 things, and I'll run through them. And if you have something to want to say on it, just cut in. Number 1, in the immediate aftermath. Number 1, in the immediate aftermath, news outlets will get it wrong, which is just correcting your sources and everything like that. After you have to report something. This is what everybody's saying. This is what the police say, and then the police correct it. Things happen. Like I agree with that. News outlets will get it wrong. Don't take everything as as 100% facts in the first hours or even days after some attacks or some things that happen. We're learning, news media reporters are learning things just like you guys are and just like the police are. So we're going to get fact checked, and that's going to happen. So conspiracy theorists out there,
yes,
because this is a big thing. After Oklahoma City bombing, there was a news report that a Muslim terrorist that the police were looking for a Muslim terrorist. The conspiracy world that still think that no way that a white guy could have possibly done that bombing, still to this day believes that it was a Muslim that did Oklahoma City bombing, not that son of a gun that Anyway, I don't like saying. I have a big thing about not saying the people that do these things names, because this is, it becomes hero worship for a lot of people.
Right.
So number 2, do not trust anonymous sources. This is a really big thing on Twitter. Like, random person says something, and for some reason that's being reported, even if they have a little tag, location tag that says they're in Las Vegas or they're in the location. It doesn't mean they were anywhere near anything. It doesn't even in fact mean that they're in the city or state. It just means that they have a location tag. You can write those in. You don't have to actually be there. There's actually photos floating around. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Well, I've also seen where, like, some reporters will use idle chatter between 2 police officers and not get the names of them, just say, oh, anonymous source said this. Yeah. These 2 police officers, it's just idle chatter.
Yeah. And so often, like, we get really frustrated with police officers when you try to ask a question, especially like protests and stuff like that. It's like, oh, hey, was there any arrest today? And they go, well, I don't know. There's a really good chance they actually don't know.
Yeah.
And they very likely, especially like the low end police officers who are just there, stopping the media from rushing a scene, they don't know, because they're probably not in the loop, and they're not even on that. They're
just a body. They're just a body.
Yeah, exactly. There. Yeah. Number 3, don't trust stories that cite another news outlet as the source of information.
Echo chamber.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This is like every news story. You don't know how many times, as like when I've worked as a fact checker or when I was worked as a researcher, especially months and years later, you're trying to be like, well, BuzzFeed. I don't know. I don't want to take BuzzFeed because they actually do really good fact checking usually. Rolling Stone or something cited, this new NBC report. And it's like, well, then you go to find that NBC report, and you find that the NBC report actually cited the AP thing. And then you go to the AP thing and you go, oh, wait, first off, AP never actually said that. And also they retracted it. You're like, wait a minute. This is this is a story I always love to tell. Did you know that people who listen to the people that listen to the Nixon debates with Kennedy, that all that information, all that stuff about how they came through on it is a complete and totally made up thing. All that story about how, people who watched it, thought that Kennedy won, and people that listened to it thought that Nixon, that's all bull. It literally is made up years later by a Kennedy biographer or something like that, who was writing about the campaign, and it was just made up. Huh. It literally was just a thought process. They've actually gone through and checked polls, everything like that, and it's just made up. Because it was heard. It was a rumor. I think it was a rumor that was heard of the day or something like that, or during the time. Number 4, which this immediately already, during the Las Vegas one, I already heard, they were looking for somebody. Number 4 is there's almost never a second shooter, which how many, I think San Bernardino is the only one that I can think of that there was was there actually a second shooter, or was it just 2 people together? This is how bad.
Yeah. I think it was just his wife helped him like transport stuff. I don't think she actually participated. She just helped him. And I think this is the same case, because I've been seeing this picture of this like woman that's being constantly shown on Facebook and Twitter right now. And it's like, look for this woman. She's not the second shooter, but she helped him in some way or somehow. So the only time I can think of as a second shooter was the LA shooting, like in the 90s, where literally it was 2 gunmen that were in the streets of LA with like AK-47s just shooting stuff.
Yeah. No,
I mean, that can be.
Go ahead.
That's confirmed by a helicopter video of it. So.
Yeah. Okay. So number 5, pay attention. This is really, really important. And this is something that I've learned, especially if you write breaking news reports or you write copy for news media, for video or anything like that. This is something you start having to be really, really careful about. And also something that kind of, I feel like they probably taught, I didn't ever go to J school, but I feel like they probably taught you this in J school, but people probably really forget really quickly. And also so many people that are writing copy for news probably never went to journalism school. Pay attention to the language the media uses. We are getting reports. That can mean anything, literally mean anything. It could be like, again, you heard 2 cops talk, or it could literally mean that somebody talked to the coroner and they said, oh yes, Tom Petty is actually deceased, which is a story we'll talk about in a minute. Another one, we are seeking confirmation, which means they don't have it, which means they're talking out of their ass. When they say we are seeking confirmation, it doesn't mean anything. It means that one person, potentially it means that one person has a source on something, or one person said something, but with one source, unless it's literally the person who did it, which even then you should have a second source, it means they got nothing. News outlet X has learned means it either has a scoop or it's just going out on a limb. So kind of the same deal where, some news outlet has a scoop, but other news outlets haven't been able to substantiate it yet, which again, you should be really careful about anytime you hear that, especially in an active kind of an active news story. And again, this really works for not even just an active shooter situation, but kind of any developing like breaking news story. I think it works. Number 6, look for news outlets close to the incident. Yes. Trust your, I mean, it's kind of edgy sometimes, but like trust your local news sources, the ones, and learn which ones you can trust, and then, support them and stick by them because they're the ones that are physically there. Like, again, as it goes by photojournalists, when we talk about this, we have to physically be there for news stories. So, I mean, more often than not, you can actually trust a photojournalist to actually say something, because we're also by far more paranoid about getting things wrong, it seems, than reporters. I don't know why, but
Well, and that actually goes even further to, the idea of like, oh, AP got has the story or got the scoop, or Getty has the story or has the scoop. Just because they have photos that say AP or Getty does not mean it's an AP photo or a Getty photo. They just bought it. They could have just bought it.
Yeah. No, I mean, they AP, when they bought one of my photos from Charlottesville, and they actually went through and did at least a good measure of fact checking and talked to me and made sure that they got the full story around the photo, because it could be a photo completely taken out of context. And I've read reports. I've read reports that people are already sharing photos that they're saying are from Las Vegas or from other things.
Right.
Which, dear Lord, if anybody actually follows the like the Palestine Israel fight, you know that 8 times out of 10, the photos that people share, especially activists that share on both sides of like supposedly children being killed or whatever, are almost always from some older event.
Right.
I literally have almost, I would say that 80% of the time it's from either an older event or from some other event. I'm already seeing that in Yemen as well, because it's so hard to get photos out of there. Bad things are happening, but nobody has photos. So people are literally sharing photos from Palestine or from other events.
Well, more recently, I've been seeing a lot of like right-wing groups and people been sharing a lot of like photos of what looks like, you know, Navy or Marine Corps helping out like brown people. And they're saying, look, we're already helping Puerto Rico. The media's lying about it. And then you just look up, you just reverse Google search those images. And it's like, oh, that's from the Japanese earthquake. That's from a Taiwanese storm. That's from a different event. Like these aren't current. Yeah.
I always love that because it's so often like I have, thanks to CS Muncie, I have a who has an obsession with like military uniforms. He's obviously in the military, so it's kind of understandable. But I have a vague knowledge now of BDUs from over the years. So that's the basic kind of outfit camouflage that you see people wear. So now I can immediately go, wait a minute, they didn't have digital camo back then, or wait a minute, the Navy doesn't wear that color, or it didn't do that then. And we're like, immediately have that like check, and then thank God I can always send it to him, and usually he pops on Messenger or whatever and says, wait, no, that's not right. It's no way in hell that they would have had those uniforms then. So clearly, you know, maybe somebody in the military, but it's not a Navy guy or it's not a whatever. Right. But yeah, no. I mean, it's amazing because I'm on a bunch of Trump pro-Trump newsletters because I hate myself, and and they're already spreading the momentary. AP had a story about that ISIS Twitter went out and went out and said that this guy had converted to Islam and had also joined ISIS. They've already retracted that. And they didn't even have to retract it because they initially put it within the context that said a Twitter reportedly, you know, like there's all these contexts, all these caveats that they put even in the original message. But since people read what the heck they want to read in a message, they ignored the reported, they ignored the supposed, or they ignored all these things, and they went with facts. And I got a newsletter from them like 3 hours ago, after the AP had already retracted it, saying, "Oh, this guy's tied to ISIS." You know, God forbid, you can't have a white guy shoot up a bunch of people, murder a bunch of people without it being somehow a Islamic convert or whatever. They did that to the guy. Tried to do that to the guy in Charlottesville. They disassociated themselves completely. He was a complete loon, made up all this stuff about him, saying that he was tied to all these other groups and not tied to these white supremacist Nazi groups. And it was amazing how quickly they did that. They had that story up by the end of the day on, I think it wasn't Breitbart. It was Daily Stormer. Had already done it.
Well,
second favorite website.
No, but the problem is that once it's on Daily Stormer, people copy and paste that stuff, and then immediately spreads everywhere, and it goes through the message boards, and it goes through all the other blogs, and then it usually ends up feeding back into Breitbart, into the right wing kind of blogosphere. The more respected.
Echo.
Yeah. Let's see. Number 7. Compare multiple sources. Yes. Chances are, but you have to do that. You have to do that, not just compare multiple sources, but you have to do that along with number 3, which is don't trust stories that cite another news outlet. Because if you compare multiple sources nowadays, you compare, MSNBC and CNN, and they cite each other, or they both cite the AP tweet or whatever, you have the same problem. So, you just get into the, trying to think of a better coin on Echosphere, echo chamber, but I couldn't think of anything. Number 8, big news brings out the fakers and the photoshoppers, which I feel like kind of already, there hasn't been photoshopped images yet, but there's already, you know, fake images attached to things. I know I've had, have any of you guys had any of your images or work used for this?
I don't really watch too closely on my stuff. Like whenever I see my stuff, I'm like, oh wait, why is my stuff being used this way? And then I'll kind of like see if it's like legitimate or not. But like, it's so rare that I actually just like look for that kind of stuff. But maybe.
No, I know because I've had my photos. I've had a bunch of different my photos used by other groups, like, or whatever, by people, and whether or not even like faking it as a different event. But you know, I mean, like just my Charlottesville photos I've just seen immediately because I've been making sure and I've been keeping an eye out for it. I actually kind of I occasionally post a message on Twitter and Facebook saying, hey, if any of you guys see my photos on a right-wing news site, please tell me, because most right-wing news sites don't actually buy photos from The Wire. And I say right-wing, I just say right-wing blogosphere, kind of where they don't buy photos from The Wire, they just steal stuff, which is interesting considering their obsession with capitalism. But I also would never sell my photos to them because I know that they would put them in a different context than what is factually true. But I've had a handful of my photos where people are going, oh, this is what happened. And I'm like, no, I was there. I was behind the camera. I took it. I can tell you it's not true. And finally, and this is on all of us, journalists and people listening and whatever, beware of reflexive tweeting. Some of this is on you. This is one of the biggest problems. The few times that I've actually gotten something wrong, when I've tweeted out something, I am terrified when I look back and go, oh my God, it has, 50 retweets or whatever, because even though if I get something wrong, I immediately delete it. And then if I can, I'll screenshot it and go, I was wrong in this. Don't quote me on this. And really get really obsessed. But once it's retweeted, it's out there,
right. And
it's been screenshotted, it's been, embedded, and doesn't always go away when it's embedded, even if you delete it. So it's problematic. So
it's like that quote, false information travels around twice around the earth while the correct information is getting its shoes on.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that was something I learned really well through the Bush administration, because that administration really weaponized mistruths, and they figured out really quickly on how to get false information out there and then go, I don't know what you're talking about. We never said that. Go ahead, look at the transcripts. We never said those things. But like the inside media circles, when it comes to Fox News and everything like that, they would do that. But all of this brings news. How do you guys deal with your social media? You guys, Ron, like, do you? You're not really that much on social media, but do you feed
as little as possible, sir?
Yeah, I mean, is that purposeful? So that you don't get in trouble?
I'm not right. No. Well, it's not just that. I work for one organization.
Yeah.
I'm not out there trying to hustle other jobs too much. People call me every now and then. I do stuff bits and pieces, but for the most part, I work for one organization. They handle everything. I give them the story, and they do it. It's up to them to propagate on their social media what they want to portray. I don't get involved in that too much. I have an Instagram account for my personal stuff and the stuff that they don't use at my station. I'll put some photos that they don't use, that I have permission to use for my own purpose. But that's my social media presence nowadays.
Yeah. Do you like that? I mean, would you like to be
Fine
able
with
to?
Me. I don't like getting involved in social media too much. Yeah. I have a Facebook account. I don't use my Facebook account. I have a Twitter, but I don't use my Twitter. And I have Instagram, and I use it sometimes.
Yeah. Would you be okay, like, if sorry, Tyler, would you be okay if say Chicagoist asked you to basically stay off that, and they'll like send them tweets or send them information, and have them, if you were, say you were full-time there, staffer, because I mean, like, CNN, almost every major news broadcasting place, they break, like, people will break, news journalists will break stories on their own Twitter, and then CNN will, write a story about it or something. Would you be okay with that, or would you be more comfortable? Or because I know we were talking before.
The thing is I'm more of a photographer than an actual writer. I don't write at all for my publication, and the only times that I'm ever quoted, quote unquote, is when I actually do like some of my tweeting. I don't do a lot of tweeting. It depends. If there's enough lull time that I can actually get a tweet out without, risking a photo, losing a photo, then I'll do it. But if it's like things are happening like this, I'm not going to risk losing a photo just to send out a little tweet that might get a couple reactions or whatever. Because I know afterwards I'll be kicking myself if I lost that photo. But they'll sometimes use it in the stories. And sometimes if it's like a really developing story, like the last time we did a really big developing story was O'Hare. When at O'Hare Airport, there were all those airport protests at the beginning of the year. Yeah. Because of the Muslim ban. Yeah. And they were using mine and Aaron's, who's a staff writer there, tweets and kind of like information. We were just texting them, hey, there's like 1,500 people here. Okay, now it's jumped up to 3,000. They just kept updating it throughout the night. But if they had me do that like full time, I don't know. It's the only reason I wouldn't feel comfortable with it is because I'm missing photo opportunities just to get information out there that, I'm starting not to like Twitter anymore because it's just like this giant yelling match.
Yeah, I have friends that work for other organizations, not my own, other organizations, and they're required to tweet so many times a day, even if it's just a retweet or whatever. They're required to do that or post on their Facebook
I'm seeing
or whatever.
That a lot
they have
more
requirements for
on
that,
job descriptions that must know, even for just photojournalists, not for like multimedia journalists or anything like that. Must know, be friendly with with multimedia or with all forms of social media and everything like that. And I'm kind of surprised because again, I don't know a lot of photojournalists that feel really comfortable about social media. Like Tyler, both of you guys are by far the norm for photojournalists that I know that don't like to play around with it at all. Like even Marcus DePola, who uses it a lot. He is like, he uses his private Facebook page as, a rant thing or whatever, usually about like candy or something, or airplane seats. But his public stuff is very straight and very thing. I'm about the only one that I know that is like goes on late night rants on different topics and gets myself in trouble for things. But I enjoy that, and I don't know if I could. If the Times, like a real publication hired me and was like, Zach, you can't do this, I'd be like, okay. And then probably I'd start like some fake account somewhere. Like,
I think it's that fear. I think it's that fear that you'll get nailed to the cross over something you say. Yeah. Later, I could be now, or it could be like 10 years down the line. And I think, especially for photographers, that's huge because there's so few jobs, and you want to keep what you got, or you want to make sure you have the opportunities afterwards. Because if the job market was more there's plurific, if it was more than it is now, I'm pretty sure there'd be a lot more opinionated people. Like, whatever, I can get a new job. You don't like me, fine, whatever.
Well, I think part of it too is that there's so few photojournalists out there that actually write anything at all. But even the few photojournalists I know that do write things, like Nick Curry out in California, Monterey, he writes, it's very, short copy that goes along with it. That would almost be like, he writes very well, but like he does, either it's a straight interview or it's, this is what happened sort of thing. Nothing, like I write opinion a lot. Or, as I you know, it's usually like gonzo journalism type stuff, like, you know, running through my experience of what actually happened that day and things like that. So, you know, I mean, like I swear on a regular basis in my writing. So, you know, I again, like, I think I'm so far out, not only because of who I've worked with. You know, my first job was with Greg Palast, who has kind of burned every bridge in mainstream media in America, and my name is inherently attached to his. So, which is fine. I mean, I wouldn't want to work with anybody who wouldn't want to work with you know, a guy that's done some of the best reporting in America and in the world. So
the man's a legend.
Yeah, if you don't want to hire, if you don't trust Greg Palast reporting, then you don't trust my reporting because I'm his researcher. So right. Screw that. But anyway, we've gone really long on this. I feel like we could go longer, but and I'm sure we'll talk way more about this in the future. So the next story, it's kind of feeds into this pretty much the same, where it's a breaking news story, but this one is specifically about the non-obituary or obituary of Tom Petty. So this is, we'll know by the time people listen to this in the coming weeks. Well, people will know better than we know right now. But what was reported was first that Tom Petty, the musician Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, had a massive heart attack and was on life support. And then it was reported that he was off life support. And I guess that most people took that as he's dead, except that they never reported that, and that he is just, I suppose it's in a coma. And so many news sites reported that he was dead and haven't changed the title of their article, but have added a little thing because of the way that blogosphere and everything, you know, the way that WordPress essentially works and everything else. But Rolling Stone kind of has taken a step further, and let's see if they've actually updated it. And they have. So. They have. I screenshot it, so I'll actually post it. But up until
so did I screenshotted it.
Yeah, up until about 8:30 or so, 8:15. The caption on Rolling Stone's story, which the title now has been changed, "Report Tom Petty hospitalized with cardiac arrest," has been changed. It said that he had died because it obviously led into another story, and that wasn't the photographer's fault because this is a Getty image from taken, my guess is in the 70s or 80s. So obviously he didn't write this, but it does say George Rose Getty Images right after the caption, which is where it is. Like, I'm not quite sure, I guess, what's your guys' take on this? Because, like, how, like...
So just to add a little more context to kind of the time of events. So TMZ reported that he was, they're the first to report that he was unconscious from a cardiac arrest. Yeah. They were also the first to report that when he arrived to the hospitals, EMTs were unable to find, or not EMTs, but doctors were unable to find brain activity. Yeah. That was the end of TMZ's reporting. It was then CBS that originally confirmed Petty's death.
Right. Yeah.
And then that's when LAPD declined to comment on the situation, and then ultimately said, "We have not confirmed that he is dead. We're still looking for confirmation from the coroner." So this seems like this is an issue that, like Zach said, someone probably heard that he was pulled off life support, and CBS just pulled the trigger on the story, saying, "Okay, he's dead," you know. Yeah. And whether that means he actually is dead or if he's just stable enough that he doesn't need to be on life support at this point in time, who knows?
I'm looking at the article right now, and it also says this: CBS originally confirmed Petty's death per the Los Angeles Police Department, but TMZ claims musician is still on life support. And the thing about it is, right, the caption has been changed to where it said he died at 66 years old. It's just changed to a, you know, he suffered a cardiac arrest. But we were talking about it before the show, the idea that in the modern age of digital, you could just correct things without printing a retraction. Yeah. And I don't like that. There's no, it's just things just automatically change, and there's no explanation of why they changed.
Yeah.
You can just say anything digitally. And speaking as the old man here, I like the old days when you had to print a retraction. Say, gosh, we screwed up.
Yeah.
Here's our replacement text instead.
New York Times still
But
does
nowadays-
that.
Really?
Well,
Good for them.
except unless it's Judy Miller's reporting on the Iraq War.
But no, you know what's weird though is like Facebook still archives like you know the preview post that you'll get on Facebook when you click a link on. If the headline's ever changed, but you submitted it to Facebook prior to that change, even when it's changed, it doesn't change it on your side of it. It still shows the original headline. It still shows the original caption. And sometimes if you have the Facebook plugin with your website, the first like sentence of the story will also still be embedded. So
I love that. I love that for fact check. When I'm doing fact checking and stuff like that, that's actually quite helpful. If I've gone back and like if I've tweeted out the story or something like that, or even posted it or whatever, it's quite helpful to actually, because people, they change the stories all the time. They change the headlines. Salon.com is atrocious for changing headlines for their social media purposes. Like they will actually use a completely fake headline to get clicks that will say something that the story inside does not substantiate and doesn't say anything, because they're just a nightmare when it comes to that. And that's actually a huge problem I find. But would you guys like actually be able to, because one thing I find with my wire, and I assume most wires, you can't, like, I've gotten more information. Like when I originally sent like the photo, just because it's in my mind is the photo of DeAndre Harris getting attacked. I didn't know his name at the time of publishing, except now it says that original caption that I wrote, which a young black man or something is getting beaten by, and I can't update that, and it drives me mad, because it's like I have all the information. There's so much more information I can add to it, but anybody who uses that photo, I hope to God that they change the caption, but they change it obviously correctly. But because a lot of time I don't think that. My wire doesn't really do mandated captions, but a lot of times news agencies will do mandatory captions. But
I think AP and Getty requires that, don't they?
AP does. Yeah, I think so. I see it. I see it occasionally on my photos. But would you guys like to be able to go back through, and do you have any photos or anything like that you'd like to be able to go back through and change the caption to? That is the photo. We all have photos that we love to go through and change. I wish the lighting was better. I wish that I used a. Believe me. But
now, regarding captioning, I let the chips fall where they may. That's what I say. Yeah. It's there. It's in there forever. Come on.
I mean, a good example of this is if you look at the Las Vegas shooting. Anyone who's using the Getty photos are still using last night's caption, which say only like 2 were dead, 2 were killed.
Yeah. God.
Even though it's up to like 60, I think now.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully they're actually changing that information. It's weird to me that Getty, that they're not actually updating that sort of thing, because obviously Getty has people. Like my wire doesn't have anybody. I upload to a thing, and I know that probably no one even looks at them. You know, it's such a small wire service. But Getty has, I know for a fact, people that fact check things or double check things as they go along. Unless, of course, they're Iraq people getting photos from Syria, you know, as we've discovered in the last thing, and they're actually a fake surfer dude or something. But is that one guy, whatever. Hopefully he's getting his comeuppance. But unless anybody else has anything to add, our final story is one that Ron dug up, and I find it interesting. Do you want to introduce that story?
Well, just the idea. There was a photographer. He wanted to cover the seal hunting profession, and he says, "Well, to do this right, I should get a class on how to be a seal hunter." So he got his license to be a seal hunter, and they went out there on the ice to shoot the seals being clubbed. And he says, "You know what? Let's shoot this all in black and white so the red blood doesn't scare people." And my idea was, as an interesting show topic for us, what do you think of purposely hiding information in your photographs by making it black and white when maybe blood is the story? Maybe that's a big part of the story that you want to see is the blood. So in this case, by making it black and white, it's just black, looks like shadows, or who knows what it is. Maybe it's ink, or is it blood? What are you looking at here? So is it ethical to purposely shoot only in black and white, or or whatever else manipulations you want to call it, to hide some detail of the story. Is it ethical? And I thought we could talk about it.
Yeah. Tyler, did you have thoughts on it?
I'm going to have a very controversial opinion, and this will get me blacklisted by the photographic community. But I think in this day and age, especially with digital printing, publishing, whatever you want to call it, what have you, there is no reason for editorial black and white. There's absolutely no reason for it. It used to be you had to do black and white because that's all you could do, because that was film. It used to be you had to do black and white because that's all you could print was in black and white, because it's cheap to print in black and white. But if you're now publishing on the internet, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever that you should be printing or publishing in black and white, because you're hiding information. And it's, for me personally, turning your colors off, shooting it in monochrome, or shooting it in color, then adjusting it to monochrome, which is probably what this guy actually did.
Right, probably what he did, yeah.
That is the same as just shifting the color sliders a little bit to make the colors pop a little bit more, or to make the blues a little bit more blue. And as far as SPJ, as far as any photographic photojournalism thing is concerned, sliders, all that stuff, that's unethical.
Yeah.
Why isn't color, turning off color?
So what if, and I'm trying to see if he shot this digitally, I think. Unless, what if he shot it in, I mean, so would you ever shoot a story in Triax?
Personally?
Yeah.
No. And more so on the fact that I want to make sure I have the images. I don't want some developing error. I don't want to have some kind of like minor hiccup all of a sudden mean that I don't have images. Because then I'm out of a job.
Well, I mean, would you, and obviously Ron, feel free to answer this as well. I mean, would you shoot a story? Like, I mean, I shoot a lot of stuff, on my own, like on my own, and just whether they be personal projects or they be other things. I mean, like I would love to be able to go back and shoot some work, on film and on, specifically on Triax. Like I miss shooting Triax so much. Because I feel like, there's an emotion there. I mean, in the same way that, like, even choosing, because even choosing, if you shot color film, choosing what film stock you used would do it. I mean,
right.
So I mean, like, would you find that, like, if I shot, say I shot this story, say I'm against seal hunting, and I shot this in Kodachrome, assuming we had Kodachrome, long live Kodachrome, which has a much deeper red, much deeper colors, and would actually emphasize these things that this guy is potentially trying to not hide, but just not emphasize per se. Would you find that okay? Or I mean, like, what's your line?
I mean, the question on should we be shooting it in film or not? I mean, that's irrelevant in this day and age because we're fully 100% feet into the digital era. But for projects and all that stuff, I mean, you have to ask yourself, is it more is what you're doing with your project, not just you personally, but anyone who does this? Because I know some other photographers, they'll have a digital on one end and then they'll bring a film camera for a personal project on the other end, on their other arm. Is this for editorial use, or is this for a personal art kind of project you want to do like in a year, 6 months, 2 years time?
Yeah.
And if this is for editorial use, which these photos clearly are for editorial use, I mean, you have a headline, you have a little story that goes with it. These are clearly editorial images. This is on Washington Post, which is clearly a editorial website. This has nothing to do with art. This is clearly editorial, and as it is editorial, these images should be under the same scrutiny as other editorial images.
Yeah.
And like Ron said, covering up the blood by making it just black, I think that's a problem. Now, whether or not this is his choice or if this was the choice of the publication because they don't want to like scare viewers with the red blood, I mean, either way.
This is, and obviously, from if anybody knows a lot more about this guy, I believe this is more, I think he was doing this not for the Post. Like, I think this is a discussion of these photos in the Post, like a lens blog type, like New York Times has their lens blog thing. But so, I mean, are you familiar with Sebastião Salgado's work?
personally. The name doesn't sound familiar, but I might know.
I don't know the name.
Just he's a photographer that is quite famed for covering. Like he did this great book called Workers, where he covers like workers from throughout the world and like massive mine camps and stuff like that in Africa.
Okay, I remember those images.
And like I mean, like he's one of those photographers. You Google search his name, you recognize the images. But I mean, he shoots. I don't know if exclusively, but he shoots in black and white. And I mean, I think the thing that he's trying to do with this, which I just don't know whether following them on the hunt itself the right thing, because he was trying to personalize. He was trying to make the seal hunters human, or like give a human look on it. So I find it. I'm curious if, like, obviously there's probably more images than these images that we just see here, but like if you're trying to personalize someone, you're seeing, like, I would spend time with them at home. You know, I mean, like as opposed to shooting them in the kind of. I mean. It's hard to argue that whether it's horrific in the same way that, you know, I'm not vegetarian, I'm not vegan, I'm not anything. Like, if you ever been to a slaughterhouse, it's horrific. Like, there's almost no argument that it's horrific. It's whether or not you're okay with the horrific nature of it, you know. But seal hunting, seal hunting is horrific. I mean, you're killing very cute, adorable animals. You know, things that are usually Disney cartoon, you know, type things. They're not for. I mean, I guess they're for food for some of them. Like I know some Alaskan natives that you know, it's literally what they live on.
Well, there's like villages in Greenland. Like that's the only way they can survive. Like economically, because sending food to them is just so expensive.
No. But and you know, I know that, you know, they like a couple of friends of mine, they've been attacked like lately by Sea Shepherd, by what's his name, Captain. I forget the name of the captain. I actually interviewed him, but been attacked by. But it seems weird to me that you wouldn't, like, if I was going to do a story about sea hunters or seal hunters, that I would spend time with them at home, like as opposed to be like, and maybe I'd shoot that in black and white, maybe I'd shoot that in color. I don't know. I like black and white, but I don't know if I'd go out and purposely choose not to do it. I mean, I don't know if I go so far as what you're saying, Tyler, which is just never do it, never. But in this, since it's not like I'm trying, there's a, you know, I mean, like say I'm covering a abusive, like domestic violence or something like that, where there's not like per se a lot of blood. It's like distinct, you know, they're very violent images, but not like a lot of blood around or anything like that, hopefully. But I use black and white. It's not really hiding anything, but it's just providing a kind of a different look than, say, you know, your digital camera would show. But this is specifically hiding things from it. I mean, I don't know if I could do the same thing with almost any. I mean, I can't think of anything else that people would be like, oh well, you know, use this thing to specifically hide the, you know, the swastikas on people's arms when you're covering Nazis or something like that, and be like, oh, well then it's just, I just want to show the personal side of things on them. It is an interesting thing. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with it, but.
Well, I think if he intended this as an art piece,
yeah,
and it was picked up by the Post, I think that really does change the story, rather than he was doing this as a photojournalist and trying to show the human side without the blood, even though the blood is so integral. I think it makes a difference.
Yeah, I agree with Ron on that. I agree with him.
And I'm with Tyler as well. If I'm a photojournalist, I don't see the point in submitting black and white images. Well, I'll make one. I just thought of one instance when I would, and that is sometimes when I screw up the lighting, it looks so much better in black and white. I can hide things a lot better. Ooh, look, it looks like nice in black and white. But apart from that, yeah.
Before I ever get called out for being a hypocrite, there's been 2 times that I have had to submit 2 black and white images. The only reason I had to submit them was because I accidentally bumped a setting on my camera, and that's the only photo I have of that.
Yeah.
which was a black and white. So there was nothing I could do.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because even your example with domestic abuse, it blurs that line. Are these editorial images or is this art? Are you fetishizing and making this into like an art piece versus what it actually is, which is the discussion of this? And this gets into that like gray area of like what is art and what is like actual information editorial use. You know what I mean? Because that gray area exists. That was the first thing we learned in photojournalism classes that I took, which was don't photograph homeless people unless you're actually there to photograph them for their help.
Yeah.
Like, because those are the easiest targets to photograph on the streets of Chicago, and they make very great images, distinct, amazing, like artistic images. Yeah. But if you're just using it to help yourself, you're not doing anything for them. That's unethical too.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think that you can use, like, personally, I think that you can use black and white imagery. Like I even thought about using it when I'm covering a lot of these civil rights issues that I cover, because I want to harken back. I want people to think about it. I mean, personally, I'm happy, very happy I didn't, because I think that I already had a bunch of people like think that, you know, people were confused by whether or not certain images that I took were actually older than they are, because especially if you don't know that color photography didn't really exist the way that it did in the 60s, or that it does now, or at least the look of color. Like for you know, all of us, I assume we probably, if we saw a color photo from the 60s, we would know for a heartbeat probably what the film stock was. And, you know, I mean, like we know it's Kodachrome and maybe it's Ektachrome, maybe it's whatever. I think that it can be done if you're telling like a long-term photo essay story, like as opposed to like whether it be breaking news or news in general, like general news. I think it can be done well. I think especially using film. Like personally, I don't know, unless like you said, if it was to save a photo, and I don't know if I'd ever actually submit that photo to my wire. I would use it in my own work, because then in my own work, I know that I can contextualize it and say originally in black, originally in color, converted for, you know, something. I could add like a asterisk next to it and just be like, hey, it looked terrible. Like I shot some video. It's actually, I've almost done more converting to black and white, because you have so many problems with like color bands. Like if you're in bad lighting, and sometimes on a little LCD or whatever, or it changes. I had one interview that I did with somebody, and it was a great interview, but halfway through, I think that a fluorescent bulb went or decided to die. So you know how that, I'm sure everybody's probably been in a room when it happens. Yet the color in the room changes immediately, and now it's like this orange cast. And I'm like, screw it, it's black and white. People will have to deal. It'll look weird. Oh, that's what it actually is. I took a video of a drone at the New York State Fair. They have a drone thing, like a fake drone setup that kids can go in and fly drones around, like as in military, like Predator drones.
I thought you were talking like DJI Pros or something.
No.
Okay, that's kind of cool.
But you can go through and fly drones and then shoot things in it. So I have these little kids, little 8-year-olds flying a military drone in combat, like they're in this whole combat thing, and the lighting was just atrocious, and it had the banding that you get, and I'm like, I can't not use this video, it's too freaking good. And so I just threw it in black and white, and it actually adds a lot more than I'd want. I'd rather have the horrible lighting in the place, because to me, the lighting, the horrible yellow fluorescent bulb lighting adds so much more of a depressing and terrifying aspect to it than say black and white, which makes it look, I don't know, a little arty or something. But yeah. So, well, I think we're about an hour in. Does anybody else have anything to add on this topic?
Regarding, I just one last bit here about the black and white. We have a mutual acquaintance who is a very famous internationally well-renowned photographer who absolutely loves Tri-X. And he would still shoot in Tri-X if it wasn't for the ease of digital. Shoot sometimes in Tri-X. I would like to get him on again sometime and let him defend himself.
I see, I think I just wish that there was a way to say you're shooting film, because of scanning processes and everything else. Now you can shoot film, even Triax, which is kind of grainy, which is why I love it. And you can't really tell, because of the scanning process, everything, it just looks so good, especially if you're good at shooting film. And so if there was like a way to be like, this was a shot on film, I'd be all about that. But when you're uploading the wires and things like that, where that's not really something you add. I don't think. I mean, I don't know. I've never uploaded scanned files to a wire service, so maybe there's a place in the captioning that you could do it. I would suppose there probably is.
I don't think for Getty, the only thing I can think of is Getty, because they buy so many archives.
Yeah, they
don't have anything that just says this was shot on film, or they don't even put the year sometimes on some of the captions. Sometimes. Yeah.
But like I would love to see. I wish, obviously, with time turnaround and everything like that. I don't see us ever being able to shoot film again if we wanted to, even if we wanted to. I mean, I'm nervous like you, Tyler, where I would be very hard pressed to ever just carry film cameras around. I would always carry, like, I'd like to carry like my Nikon FG or something like that as well, especially since I can switch lenses around, which is super nice. But I would do it in conjunction with digital, probably. And also because, then you have a light meter in your hand, so it's really nice.
Right.
but yeah, so yeah.
My final thought on it is I think it's a generational thing, because probably when you guys started, that was all you had was film. Be it like what you love, like the Kodachrome or whatever, or be it like towards the ending of film. For me, when I started, we were already in the digital age. My first camera was a Nikon D3000. So like, I never really got the film.
Oh my God.
I never really got the film experience. So
you don't know how lucky you are.
No, man. I mean, I've gone on rants about this before where, I thank God that I started on film. It saved my butt so many times when, like I was talking about covering this, Electric Daisy Carnival thing, a couple years ago for the Village Voice. It was pouring rain. The digital, all the like screens on my cameras went out, but I knew it was still taking images because I could hear the shutter and I saw the counter going. So I was able to, because I shot on film for years, I knew I could basically, estimate light meter and everything like that. I mean, I suppose probably you could do this without having the film experience, just by like knowing your camera really well. Yeah. But like still, like I just know that not being able to look down and chimp at my photos, like it actually, like I actually had a lot of fun shooting it, because it was just like at a certain point it was like, screw it, I don't know what else we're gonna do. But yeah, so anyway, we I guess that got here. Ron or Tyler, anything else? One more try?
I know you're anxious to get off. We can.
No. I think that we're just kind of going around in cycles on the same conversation on it. So, but it's
speaking of light meters and guessing a settings and whatnot. Just a recollection from the past when I was shooting film. Yeah. My first camera was a Yashica 35mm camera with a broken light meter. So I learned photography by trial and error at $5 a lesson to develop my film.
No, it was a much more expensive learning process back then. Because I used to, when I worked at B&H, I used to tell everybody, here's your first camera. You get a 50mm 1.8 prime. I'm not going to let you buy anything else until this is a great thing of not working on commission. You could actually tell people this. I'm not going to let you buy any more lenses until you come back to me with 1,000 photos you took, and tell me you took 1,000 photos, and then show me your best 10 photos, and then I'll let you buy the next lens. And people would be like, okay. They buy like, back then it was the D700. It was a $3,000 camera. They buy the nice, I think the 58 I don't know if there was a 50 higher end 50 millimeter back then, but
No.
they'd buy like whatever. And then they'd come back, and like a lot of times they had prints out, digital prints out. And she would show me, and I'd be like, okay, this is good. Okay, I'll let you buy a next lens. What lens would you like to buy? And then I talk to them and usually talk them down from buying the 24 to 70 or whatever, because I'm like, you're insane. You don't need this lens right now. Or buy the used one. What are you doing buying a brand new one? I'm sure my managers there probably would not have liked to actually hear that conversation, but I don't care. That's why I often had the highest sales, at least. But anyway, let's call it a night. Hopefully, Dave will be on with us next week. I don't know how long he's going to be stationed down there, or and hopefully he'll return with many good stories and photos, and maybe return with a couple of photographers that can join us and talk about what's happening in Puerto Rico. Now that probably a really good chance that we won't hear much about it on the news media for the next week. Speaking breaking news stories. So yeah. So if you want to find out more information about us, you can go to aroundthelens.com. And I just realized usually Dave does. Tyler, how can people find out more information about you?
If you want to tell me how terrible my opinions are on black and white photographs, you can find me on Twitter at Tyler Lariviere, Tyler Lariviere. And that's about it, actually.
And also you can find your work at
Chicagos.com.
Yep. There you go. Yep. And hopefully occasionally over at Visu News as well. So since you are a founding member, so get on it. But and Ron, you want to share where people can find you?
Every Monday here on Around the Lens.
There you go. Every Monday. There you go. So if you want to follow us, you can go to aroundthelens.com, and we post our the podcast up there, where you can follow us on iTunes, on TuneIn, and all the other places. I don't know. I don't even know which podcast app I use anymore. Switching back and forth between Apple and Android, so I don't even know. But also you can find us on what is it? Around. Dave is going to kill me when he hears the end of it. You can go to aroundthelens.com, and then you can find out where we are on social media on that website. Go to that one location and check it out. And if you want to support us, there's a Patreon up there. Kick us a couple bucks, and we'll give you, well, actually, we can't give you early access to the episodes because we do this thing live. So I don't know. We'll send you some prints or something like that if you subscribe. I promise you they won't be in black and white. Or if you want them in black and white, I'll convert any photo you want into black and white just to piss off Tyler. We'll start a donation level, $10 a month. It's the piss off Tyler. Everything's in black and white. Anyway, everyone have a good night, and thanks Tyler, and thanks Ron, and Dave, if you're listening, I'm sorry.